What Suella Braverman started, Chris Philp, who I expected more of, is continuing. He says today, on this point about human rights, I mean, look, it is very, very difficult to accommodate 40,000 people who turn up illegally in a very short space of time. And then he goes on. The Home Office tries its best to accommodate and look after them. But, quote, if people choose to enter a country illegally and unnecessarily, questionable, it is a bit of a cheek to then start complaining about the conditions when you have illegally entered a country without necessity. Allowing for the tautology in that statement and the viciousness, which comes very, very close to the sort of viciousness that we saw in the French Parliament yesterday, and the racism, it is extraordinary how our government is now peddling a sort of, well, a sloganized agendum that all asylum seekers are illegal migrants. That is the slogan. It's not specifically stated, but everything spins out from that position. Of course, it's fundamentally wrong. It's based on something which is wrong. It's based on a number of things that are wrong. Number one, that there is such a thing as an illegal migrant. There is, but it's not based on how somebody gets into the country. It's based on whether, after getting into the country, they claim asylum or not. And then whether our process allows them asylum or not. If that asylum is rejected, and if they then refuse to leave the country, they become an illegal migrant, only at that point, which, given the tardiness and the laziness of our present Home Office, that can be in 2 years' time. So to talk about illegal migrants is to use the sort of proleptic language that is quite technical and is rarely found except in a religious context or in the pages of Shakespeare. From that point of view, linguistically, I'm quite impressed with Mr. Philp. But beyond that, we have turned an extraordinary corner where we have demonized economic migration to an extent that nobody's questioning whether or not that is something that is fundamentally wrong or not. I personally don't think it's fundamentally wrong, particularly because in my own family, I can point to people who came to the UK as economic migrants. Fact. And I think many of us could do the same. I wouldn't be here without those economic migrants coming to this country. And it is absurd to say that now suddenly, because our political climate has changed slightly, these people are automatically illegal. If they're illegal now, then they were illegal then. Brexit has ushered in new rules. Why? Because we can no longer rely on the rules that were agreed in Dublin. Those were jettisoned when we left Europe. And the problem that we've got with border control is a problem that came with Brexit. It was growing before Brexit, but it has really magnified since Brexit. And it's a problem, incidentally, we share with Europe and with countries around Europe like Turkey. Migration is in many ways out of control. But to take a demonizing approach to it and to crucify the well-meaning with the bad is absurd. We need economic migrants who are going to contribute to our country, not only those people who have great education, but also those people who are going to do the shelf stacking and the taxi drivering and the jobs that so many people here in the UK seem reluctant to do. They have traditionally been done for years and years by people who have just come to the country and want to contribute. And we are doing our very best, led by this government, led by Suella Braverman and her predecessor. We are doing, and in fact, people who came before her, the Mrs. Mays, and we are doing our very best to discourage people from contributing to our country. We are breeding in the same way that we have bred in a lot of the student population. We are breeding the wrong mentality. We are sending out the wrong signals. Those students who come to our country, we should be confident that they will go back to their own countries and promote our values. But what are our values? Greed, a sort of insularity, a growing xenophobia, amounting in times to racism. These are not the values that I recognize, but these are certainly the values that are being put forward by Suella Braverman and Chris Philp. And why should somebody who comes to this country be treated in a second-rate way because we aren't prepared? Why is that? And why should they not complain? We would support such complaints had they been made about another country. I have personal experience of that. When similar complaints were made about the quality of detention, about the conditions of detention in the holding camp in Chania, I was able to draw upon the help of the British government, David Cameron no less, and Mr. Straw, to help take a case against the Greek government. And yet, Chris Philp says these people are coming illegally and unnecessarily and have the chutzpah to complain about the conditions in which they are kept. It's not consistent and it's not right. It's ignoble.